Center stage. A glimpse into the arena. The screen lights up with images of powerful female athletes. They run, they jump, they push their bodies to the limit. Their determination is palpable, their passion undeniable. These are the warriors of the sports world, competing for victory, for recognition, for the thrill of triumph. But beneath the surface of this seemingly simple narrative lies a complex and controversial issue: the participation of transgender women in women's sports. The inclusion of transgender athletes, particularly transgender women, in women's sports has ignited fiery debates worldwide. What constitutes a level playing field? Do biological differences between trans women and cis women create an insurmountable advantage, or are these concerns overblown? The questions are numerous, the opinions diverse, and the emotions raw. This documentary delves into the heart of this debate, tackling arguments from all sides with sensitivity and nuance. We will hear from athletes, scientists, policymakers, and members of the transgender community to gain a comprehensive understanding of this multifaceted issue. Our journey takes us beyond the headlines, straight into the lives of those directly impacted by this debate. We'll examine the science behind the claims, the history of transgender people in sports, and the regulations that govern this complex landscape. Our quest for answers. Understanding the debate. At the heart of this discussion lies a fundamental question. Is it fair for transgender women to compete against cisgender women in sports? This question has no easy answer, as it intersects with deeply held beliefs about gender identity, biological sex, and the very nature of fair play. Those who oppose the inclusion of transgender women in women's sports often cite biological differences, arguing that even after hormone therapy, transgender women retain physical advantages from being assigned male at birth. They point to factors like bone density, muscle mass, and lung capacity as potential sources of an uneven playing field. Conversely, advocates for inclusion argue that reducing gender to a purely biological construct is overly simplistic and fails to acknowledge the lived experiences of transgender women. They emphasize that transgender women are women, and their identities deserve recognition and respect in all aspects of life, including sports. Furthermore, they contend that hormone therapy significantly mitigates any potential physical advantages, and that focusing solely on biology ignores the many other factors, such as training, dedication, and skill, that contribute to athletic success. This documentary aims to provide a platform for these diverse perspectives, fostering understanding and encouraging respectful dialogue. We will delve into the science, analyze the policies, and explore the human stories at the heart of this complex issue. A time before inclusion, early instances and challenges. Before regulations, before heated debates, the participation of transgender individuals in sports was often met with silence, stigma, and exclusion. The concept of transgender identity was rarely acknowledged or understood, let alone its implications for the world of athletics. Early instances of transgender athletes competing were often shrouded in secrecy, their stories untold, and their struggles unrecognized. For those brave individuals who dared to break barriers, the path was fraught with obstacles. Many faced discrimination, prejudice, and outright hostility from teammates, competitors, and sporting authorities alike. The lack of clear guidelines and the prevailing social stigma created an environment where transgender athletes were often forced to choose between their gender identity and their athletic aspirations. The absence of trans-inclusive policies meant that many athletes were forced to compete in categories that did not align with their gender identity, putting them at a distinct disadvantage or forcing them to sacrifice their authenticity for a chance to participate. The often untold stories of these pioneers laid the groundwork for the debates and developments that followed. As society began to grapple with the complexities of gender identity, the world of sports slowly started to acknowledge the need for greater inclusion. However, the road to equality was far from smooth, marked by a constant push and pull between progress and resistance, setbacks and tradition. The birth of regulation. The IOC takes the field. The dawn of the 21st century brought with it a growing recognition of transgender rights and calls for more inclusivity in all areas of life, including sports. The International Olympic Committee, recognizing the need to address this evolving landscape, took its first steps towards establishing rules for the participation of transgender athletes. In 2004, the IOC released its first guidelines governing the participation of transgender athletes in the Olympic Games. These initial guidelines, while groundbreaking in their acknowledgement of transgender athletes, also became a subject of much debate and scrutiny. The guidelines stipulated that transgender athletes must have undergone gender reassignment surgery, including changes to their primary and secondary sex characteristics. Additionally, legal recognition of their affirmed gender and a minimum of 2 years of hormone therapy were required. These requirements, while aiming to create a level playing field, were criticized by some as being overly restrictive and intrusive. The IOC's attempts to regulate the participation of transgender athletes marked a turning point in the history of sports. It signaled a growing acceptance of transgender identities within elite athletics and paved the way for further discussion and evolving policies. However, these early guidelines were just the beginning of a long and complex journey towards creating a truly inclusive and fair sporting environment for transgender athletes. To answer this, we need to look closely at the connection between sex, gender, and athletic performance. Speaker 2. Scientifically speaking, we can't ignore the differences between men and women in sports. On average, men have more muscle mass, stronger bones, and bigger lungs than women. These things help them do better in many sports. These differences come from a mix of genes, hormones, and how our bodies develop. This starts even before we're born and continues as we grow up. Speaker 2. Testosterone, the main male hormone, plays a big part in this. During their teenage years, boys experience a surge in testosterone. This makes their muscles bigger, bones stronger, and bodies produce more red blood cells, all of which improve athletic ability. Women also make testosterone, but their levels are much lower than men's. Speaker 2. These biological differences have shaped how competitive sports work, leading to separate categories for men and women to make competition fair. However, the inclusion of transgender women, who were born male but transitioned to female, adds a whole new layer of complexity to this already complicated situation. Even before puberty, guys have a lot more muscle mass than girls. Muscle mass is really important for strength and power. This difference is mainly because of testosterone. Testosterone acts like a kind of booster that helps muscles grow bigger and stronger. Speaker 2. Hormone therapy can make muscle mass go down in trans women, but studies show that some of those strength advantages might stick around, especially for people who start transitioning after puberty. Bone density is another big thing in sports that involve running and jumping, or lifting heavy stuff. And guess what? There are differences between men and women here too. Men usually have denser, stronger bones. That's because they hit a higher peak bone mass during puberty, again, thanks to testosterone. Even though hormone therapy can help trans women's bones get denser, it might not make up for not hitting that peak bone mass during their teenage years. Hormone levels, especially testosterone, are a big part of this whole conversation. Speaker 2, like we talked about before, testosterone is super important for guys developing those physical traits that give them an edge in sports. Hormone therapy tries to lower testosterone production in trans women, but getting those levels down to the typical range for women and keeping them there can be tough. Plus, it varies from person to person. For transgender women, hormone therapy lowers testosterone and adds estrogen, causing physical changes like less muscle mass and breast growth. Studies show mixed results on athletic performance. Some say after 1 to 2 years, trans women perform similarly to cisgender women. However, some advantages from male puberty might not be fully reversible, affecting fairness in sports. Continued research and open dialogue are needed to balance inclusivity and fair play. A question of fairness: competing on equal ground or tipping the balance? The inclusion of transgender women in women's sports has ignited a firestorm of debate centered around a fundamental question: does it undermine the principle of fair play? Critics argue that transgender women, having gone through male puberty, gain an insurmountable advantage, effectively tilting the playing field in their favor, even with hormone therapy. They point to physiological differences inherently tied to biological sex, such as increased muscle mass, bone density, and lung capacity, as factors that hormone therapy cannot entirely erase. These advantages, they contend, can translate into dominance for transgender women, especially in sports where strength, speed, and endurance are paramount. This perspective often emphasizes the importance of protecting women's sports, which have historically struggled for recognition and resources. Allowing transgender women to compete, they argue, could reverse decades of progress toward equality, potentially discouraging cisgender women from participation and diminishing their chances of success. Furthermore, critics raise concerns about the verification process for transgender athletes, questioning the reliability of current methods in determining eligibility based on hormone levels. They argue that the potential for manipulation and the complexities of individual hormonal variations make it challenging to ensure a truly level playing field. Organizations like the International Olympic Committee and World Athletics are trying to create guidelines that balance inclusion and fair play. This is a really difficult task, and people have different opinions about it. Speaker 5, the IOC, which is the main group that runs the Olympic Games, has recognized for a long time that transgender athletes need to be included to make sure everyone has a fair chance. Their guidelines have been changed a few times to keep up with the latest scientific research on transgender athletes and to reflect the ongoing conversations happening in society. Speaker 5. The current IOC rules are moving away from strict testosterone limits and giving individual sports federations more freedom to decide their own eligibility rules for their sports. They are focusing on a case-by-case approach. This change recognizes that different sports have different needs and that testosterone might affect performance differently in different sports. Speaker 5, World Athletics, the governing body for the sport of athletics, has taken a stricter approach by keeping testosterone limits for transgender women competing in certain events. Their rules, which are based on the idea that testosterone gives athletes an advantage, have been both challenged and upheld in court, which shows just how controversial this issue is. Part 2. A policy mosaic: national and local approaches to transgender inclusion. Beyond the global stage, individual countries and local sports organizations are grappling with their own interpretations of fairness and inclusion, resulting in a patchwork of policies that vary significantly in their approach to transgender athlete participation. Some countries have adopted inclusive policies that allow transgender athletes to compete in accordance with their gender identity without requiring medical interventions or hormone-level restrictions. These nations prioritize the affirmation of gender identity and view participation in sports as a fundamental right. Others have taken more restrictive measures, often requiring proof of gender confirmation surgery, hormone treatment, or adherence to specific testosterone limits. While intended to ensure fair competition, these policies have been criticized for being discriminatory and creating barriers for transgender athletes. The United States, a focal point of this debate, has witnessed a surge in state-level legislation restricting the participation of transgender athletes, particularly in youth sports. Proponents of these laws argue that they protect girls' sports and ensure fair competition, while opponents condemn them as discriminatory and harmful to transgender youth. This mosaic of policies highlights the challenges of finding a one-size-fits-all solution. Cultural norms, societal values, and scientific interpretations influence how different nations and communities approach this complex issue, leading to a diverse and often conflicting landscape of regulations. Part 1. Beyond the Podium: Public Perception and Media Portrayal. As we step outside the stadium walls and into the wider world, we encounter a whirlwind of public opinion, media narratives, and social media discourse surrounding transgender athletes. Often framed as a battle between fairness and inclusion, the issue has become a lightning rod for passionate debates that extend far beyond the realm of sports. Public perception of transgender athletes ranges from unwavering support and celebration to skepticism, apprehension, and outright opposition. Some view their inclusion as a testament to society's progress in embracing diversity and challenging rigid gender norms. They see it as a sign of a more inclusive and accepting world, where individuals are judged based on their merit, not their gender identity. Conversely, others harbor reservations, often stemming from concerns about fairness and the potential impact on women's sports. They worry that allowing transgender women to compete alongside cisgender women could undermine a level playing field, potentially disadvantaging cisgender athletes who have dedicated their lives to training and competing in their sports. Media portrayal plays a powerful role in shaping public opinion and often frames the issue in stark, binary terms that can fuel division and misunderstanding. Headlines like "Transgender athletes, fairness or farce," or "The end of women's sports" do little to foster nuanced discussion or understanding. Part 2. The ethical arena, balancing fairness, inclusion, and human dignity. At the heart of the debate lies a profound ethical dilemma. How do we balance fairness, inclusion, and human dignity for transgender athletes in sports? It's a multifaceted challenge with no easy answers, demanding careful consideration of competing values. Fairness dictates a level playing field where all participants succeed based on skills and effort. This principle underpins the integrity of sports. Inclusion demands sports be accessible to all, regardless of gender identity. Denying transgender athletes the opportunity to compete can be deeply alienating and hurtful. They deserve respect, empathy, and understanding, free from discrimination. Navigating this requires a nuanced approach, open dialogue, and rigorous research. Part 1. Finding a path forward. A shared pursuit of fairness and inclusion. The question of transgender women's participation in sports is a multifaceted challenge that defies simplistic categorization. It demands a nuanced approach that respects the rights and aspirations of all involved. Finding a path forward requires a delicate balancing act, creating a sporting environment that embraces both fairness and inclusion. It necessitates ongoing dialogue, informed by scientific evidence, guided by empathy, and grounded in respect for human dignity. We must acknowledge the valid concerns of those who fear that inclusion might compromise the integrity of women's sports. These perspectives deserve to be heard and addressed with sensitivity. At the same time, we cannot disregard the voices of transgender athletes who seek to participate in the sports they love. To deny them this right solely based on their transgender status is discriminatory and unjust. Moving forward, we must prioritize research to deepen our understanding and ensure fair competition without compromising inclusion. We need comprehensive guidelines, informed by science and guided by ethical considerations, applied consistently and fairly. Through thoughtful dialogue, rigorous research, and a commitment to empathy, we can create a sporting world where everyone has the opportunity to strive for greatness.